This is Rick Rule for Rural Investment Media and the Rural Classroom, sponsors of the 2025 Rural Natural Resources Investment Symposium, live in Boca Raton or via live stream from the comfort and convenience of your own home. Couple things about the conference before we do the interview. First of all, we're going to give you more than 50 hours of programming in 4 days, more than you can possibly absorb. To that end, whether you attend via live or live stream, the conference recordings will be available for a full year, and you're going to need it. The second thing is that we've learned to extend the conference by interviewing all of the exhibitors and all of the speakers before the conference so that you can allocate your time at the conference more efficiently. Those exhibitors that you're interested in, reach out before the conference so that you can use your time at the conference better. Note that every public company exhibitor in the conference is owned by me. At every other conference that I know of, the qualification to be an exhibitor is merely a check that cashes to buy a booth. At our conference, every individual exhibitor has been vetted, a big difference between us and the rest. Finally, because of that, we're able to make a fairly extravagant boast. Any of you who pay to attend the conference, either live or via live stream, have an unconditional money-back guarantee. If for any reason you don't think you got your money's worth, email me. I'll give you your money back. The transaction is financially riskless to you. So let's get on with the interview. Today, I'm interviewing a friend of mine of long standing. Notice, Gwen, I didn't say an old friend. Ms. Gwen Preston of West Red Lake. Gwen, I'm delighted to be interviewing you. Thank you for your years of service in various capacities to mining investors, but thank you in particular this year for your sponsorship of the Natural Resources Investment Symposium.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Yes, we have known each other a long time, and in several capacities for many years. I worked sort of alongside because I wasn't on with a company. I was a newsletter writer, which means to say I wrote about what I was doing with my money in the junior mining spectrum, and people paid to read what I had to say. And that was a fantastic position. It was a really interesting ride. And I ended up moving over after 10 years of doing that, which followed 5 or 6 years of being a journalist in the space. I ended up moving to one of the companies that I owned in my portfolio because I was so convinced on the investment opportunity in this company and sort of how exciting this company was. So that's how I ended up here speaking to you today.
Gwen, if my memory serves me correctly, even before you were a newsletter writer, you were a journalist in the mining space. You want to talk about that a little bit? Shows how old I am.
It shows how long we've known each other, Rick. Yes. I spent 7 years writing for the Northern Miner, which is the most long-standing newspaper in the metals and mining space. So that's where I cut my teeth. When I started as a journalist in the space, knew nothing about geology, mining, the stock markets. I knew nothing about any of it. But the cool thing about being a journalist is that your job is to ask questions until you understand. And so that's what I did for 7 years. And that's when I got to the point where I was really ready to start moving into the space with my own money. And that's when I started the newsletter. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey.
So one might presume in 10 years of writing a natural resources investment letter, which involved largely managing your own money and writing about your own experience, that you had the opportunity to review dozens, perhaps hundreds of companies. Is that an accurate assumption?
Oh, many hundreds. Absolutely. I mean, I probably visited the projects of 200 over my years as a journalist and as a newsletter writer, for sure. And that, those are the 200 top of the probably 1,000 that I dove into to see if I thought that they were worth putting money into, for sure.
Now I'm going to get the softball pitch for this next question, the softball pitch award. Tell me what, having reviewed hundreds of companies, drew you to West Red Lake. Why West Red Lake as opposed to, Amalgamated Moose Pasture or Consolidated Orangutan or all those other penny dreadfuls around Vancouver?
Absolutely. I mean, two things. One is that as a newsletter writer, I loved the entire range of junior mining stocks, which means to say I loved the pre-discovery explorers. I am a sucker for a good exploration target, don't get me wrong. So I loved those all the way through to, producing companies. They all have different roles to play. But the sweet spot that I realized gave me the best combination of lower moderated risk and good leverage to gold or whatever commodity it was that you're looking at were companies that were putting a new mine into production. Putting a new mine into production gives you that additional upside leverage to the commodity that you're getting exposure to. But companies that have already gotten to the point, projects that have already gotten to the point of being put into production, the risk has already been managed a lot. You're not betting on a discovery, which is very high risk. So I really like that combination. And that is precisely West Red Lake Gold's MO. Their whole goal is to do that first with the Madsen mine, which is the mine that we're about to start operating right now. And then the goal is to repeat that feat with additional projects. Those are yet to happen, but that's literally the lifeblood of what West Red Lake is trying to do. So I love that. And then the other reason was the people. So between Shane Williams, who's the president and CEO, and the team that he's established and the board that he brought on to help guide all of that, these are professionals with a lot of experience who are super focused, are passionate about what they're doing, and are committed to shareholder value. Like it's a really, really good team of people to be working with. So that was a combination that drew me in.
Now, Gwen, this won't be a softball pitch. When you talk about riskless, Madsen has evidenced some risk in the past. So perhaps you could talk about the realization of that risk and what's different this time.
Absolutely. So Madsen is a project with history, which is one of those ways of saying that it's had a few goes. The very first go was 40 years of successful operations in the 40s, 50s, 60s that produced 2 million ounces of gold from rock that averaged 9 grams per ton. So it had a successful chunk of historic operations, to be sure. Then there were a few goes more recently that didn't go as well. Predominantly the most important is one from a company called Pure Gold, who did a bunch of very good work, which is to say 180 kilometers of drilling into the Madsen deposit to define a new modern resource. And then they did some work in which they cut corners. And unfortunately, those corners that they cut meant that when they put the Madsen mine back into operation in only a few years ago, it failed. It was a bankrupt situation after 14 months of commercial operation. The opportunity that our team saw is that the corners that they cut, those can be fixed. If you have expertise, capital, and you commit the amount of time and energy that's needed, you can address those problems and put this mine back into production successfully. The problems that brought the mine down were not problems with whether the gold is there, whether the gold can be pulled out of the rock. And so when we realized that and understood that expertise, time, and money could fix the problem, then we decided to apply those things to a project that has 1.7 million ounces of high-grade gold, 7.4 grams per ton in the indicated category, has all the permits, has the mill already in place, has many, many kilometers of modern underground working. So it's really got a lot of the things that are often risky and impediments to success. It has those. It just needed some other deficiencies addressed. And so that's what we've spent the last 2 years doing. And we're right on the cusp of starting consistent gold production again.
Tell me if you can, and I get if you don't remember all these details, roughly how much money Pure Gold had invested in it, and then how much money that you had to spend to uncut those cut corners. And tell me what the market cap of West Red Lake is now.
Absolutely. So over its entire tenure, Pure Gold invested $350 million into the project. Of that $350 million, $150 million is what you would call the construction capital. So they took out a loan for $150 million to build the mine. The preceding $200 million is everything that they'd spent on drilling and permitting and engineering and getting ready to break ground, so to speak. We have put, by the time we start into production by the middle of this year, it will be roughly $200 million that we've put into this project. So yes, it will be, if you put the $150 that Pure Gold put into the build and our $350 million, I would suggest, is a reasonable number for building a new high-grade gold mine of moderate size in Canada. Our market cap today is $200 million, and the NPV of the Madsen mine, if you use a $2,600 long-term gold price, just in that financial model, is $500 million. So $200 million is our market cap, $500 million is the NPV of our sort of base case mine plan.
I'm old, but I'm good enough at math to understand 2 for 5. But humor me here. There's people from 30 countries. Are we talking US dollars or Canadian dollars?
Those were all Canadian dollars, except for when I referenced the gold price. Sorry, I did mix that up a little bit. That's true.
Got it. And you mentioned that the company was put in place with an amalgamation strategy. Is your idea to confine yourself to Red Lake, to the Abitibi? Tell me something about where you go from here after you bed this operation down successfully.
Absolutely. That's a fun question to discuss. So I think there's 2 angles to how we want to grow West Red Lake Gold. One of them remains focused in Red Lake, which is to say there's ways of making Madsen quite a bit bigger than the base case mine plan that we put out in that pre-feasibility study, which we put out in January. That's just the starting point. There are ways of making Madsen bigger. Some of them are things that we already have in hand, deposits that we already own proximal to the Madsen deposit that we plan to pull into the mine plan. And then there's also others, stranded deposits in the area that we think that we will try to see if we can acquire, to see if we can grow Madsen. That's one side of it. The other side of it is that single asset companies either fail, get bought, or get bigger. Those are the only options for a single asset company, because a single asset company is a risky thing. If all of your eggs are in one basket, there's risk there. And so we plan to get bigger. We're already looking at how we can make that happen. We do believe that there's good investment money. Investors in the Western world are currently turning their eyes to gold. And so we believe that the kinds of assets that we're interested in buying are going to get more expensive over the next year. And so we're keen to see if we can acquire something in the next little while. We'll see how that goes. You have to kiss a lot of frogs in the M&A world before you meet your prince. But we're currently out there kissing. That analogy got a little bit off the rails there. But anyways.
Don't give our subscribers any ideas. Listen, if 500 million for 200 million seems appealing, particularly if you mix in some growth, and if our attendees want to reach out to West Red Lake Gold, as I think they should, to learn more about the company before the symposium, who in particular do they contact, and how exactly do they contact this person?
I am the person. Please reach out to me with all of your questions. I'm happy to chat on the phone. Often it's easiest to arrange a phone call with an email because the phone gets quite busy. I'll give you both points of contact, but if you don't get me by phone, please drop me an email and we'll arrange a time, and then for sure we will make that phone call happen. So my email is gpreston, GPRESTON at WRL Gold. So that's West Red Lake Gold, WRLGold.com. And my phone number, if you're ready with a pen in hand, is 778-829-0459.
Gwen, thank you for a couple of decades of hard work on behalf of mining investors, in particular me, of course. Thank you, too, for your sponsorship and support of the Natural Resources Investment Symposium. I look forward to hosting you in Boca.
I look forward to seeing you. It was a great conference last year. I'm excited to go down again.